that I wasn't here, but I was able to get Opal Stagner's pictures, and that is the daughter of the family that started and had the store. They not only had the store with the groceries and all of that, but it was our first post office. And Mrs. Stagner and Mr. Stagner were our first postmaster and mistress. Now, let's see. I'm going to turn over here. I want to tell you about where the location of it. First, we had the new post office went in that location. Then the Fruitland administration office is now in the building, and it houses our superintendent and our clerk at the board, and probably some secretaries in there. If you haven't been in, when you do go in, think of back the pictures that will be shown later of the old Stagner store. And in the one picture I have here is of all their appliances that they had, and the picture of Mr. and Mrs. Stagner. Well, I do remember them. They lived in the house that was built in 1902, I think it was, 1904, down the street from the Brethren Church, and which made it fairly close to where my parents moved in 1924. And Mrs. Stagner, of course, we really were more acquainted with the Mrs.'s in those days than the Misters. And she was an absolutely lovely woman. In fact, we are still using, and what it must be, it's a cider mill that was in this old store, and they used it in their home. And then when she had no more use for it, she gave it to my mother, and therefore I got it from her. And also down the street was Dr. Richard Gardner. Richard Gardner was also a student in Fruitland High School and grade school all of his years, and practiced medicine in Boise. But what I wanted to say that Richard Gardner lived down the road from the same place, and he was always interested in making cider. So every fall we would go out to Hingler's and pick up pickup load full of rooms, I'm sure they were, and invite everybody down that we could think of and make the cider with the old crank. And that got to be too much work for my husband and Richard Gardner. So they looked around and found some kind of an engine that they put on, and so it made it easier to run. I couldn't tell you, maybe it was an old washing machine, I don't know. Maybe it's a lawnmower engine, I'm just not sure what it was. But it made it a lot easier. And then I would go and get the donuts and bring them home, and we would all sit down and have donuts and cider, and people brought their jugs, and most all of us went home with about 20 milk jugs, plastic milk jugs full of cider. And that was given to us by the Stagners that had the first Stagner store, and I hope you will get a chance to see these pictures. And these are taken inside the Stagner store, not outside, and there, like I say, you will see different people that I knew when they were much older and I was much, much younger. Then we will go on over to, see, 1910 to 1911, and it will be the old Stagner house, which is still there, and it will be across from the Pete Johnson home and kitty corner from the Brethren Church. And you can't miss it. It's just they fixed it and kind of enhanced it as to the old building. And it sits right on the corner. And many, many times that we would go down to Stagner's, because Mrs. Stagner was always a very gracious hostess. And of course, Mr. Stagner was fine too, but we as children kind of went toward the ladies. And then I have a picture here of the first depot that was in Fruitland. And this was in the early 1900s to 1909, and then that depot burned. And then there was another depot that I don't have a picture of, but we do have one down at City Hall. Sugar beets evidently weren't a real late crop that we've started here, because in the 1900s, here's a sugar beet dump. And I couldn't tell you where it is. If some of you might recognize it, I don't know. And also about the same time, we had an apple sizer, and that was in the 1900s, and that was in the Payette Valley. And there is a picture of that, and the beautiful young ladies in their costumes that we would call now, working there. Excuse me. All right, now they had to get freight to the Stegner store, and naturally we didn't have the Federal Express or anything on that order. So there is an old timer that is Russell Hooker, and he would hitch up a team, and his team would be, I think it was one white mare, and they would go and get the supplies at Ontario, and sometimes the train would be coming into New Plymouth in Ontario, and that's where they'd pick up what they needed in the team and bring it on over to Fruitland then. We didn't have pavement down the Fruitland streets, and to really get the gravel going, they had, and I think it was Les Hooker, again, that had and this was quite a few horses and quite a few wagons, excuse me. And they would go down the main street of Fruitland side by side, and two men would be at the back and one driving the horse, and they'd lift up a board and shovel the gravel underneath as the team slowly moved along. And that's the way they graveled our streets here at Fruitland. I do have a picture here too of it would have been over at the fairgrounds in New Plymouth. And it was in 1917, 1918, and had a Red Cross auction. And this is for World War I. And I want to say again, I may look up, but I wasn't here during that time. I have another picture, and this is the outside of the Stegner store, and it really makes a point of it that there is the hardware part of it and the post office part of it, and you can see from the outside. And of course the old-fashioned porches that they put on with the awnings over the buildings. Now I'm going further down, and I do recall these next pictures. We had at the far end of the street, it would be on your right-hand side, down at the end of the street, we had what we called a drugstore. And that was, I can't think of the old fellow, Mr. Gardner, shall we say, and then his son Grant Gardner. And of course Grant would be the father of Richard Gardner, and all of these people have deceased now. And it was the drugstore at the far end, and all of these buildings were two-story. And above the drugstore, the Royal Neighbors held all of their meetings, and it was quite a large hall. And of course it was a very quiet organization as far as letting you know what was going on inside this building, and they're marching and everything, but they certainly were not quiet when it came to helping everyone out at Fruitland. They were a very good group, and I can still see all of the women that would be coming and going. And then starting in the picture of the next building, which is 6 different offices, and that was called the Universal Motor Company, or the Thomas Building. And out in front of one is Grant Gardner, the druggist, and Jim McClure. Now this is an uncle of the Jim McClure that we're all acquainted with, and he was a mechanic. And then my dad, who was in the middle here, the pictures when you do look at them. And you'll notice these old pumps, and of course they had to have the tanks down underneath. And Hodge, what was his first name? When he bought the buildings from me, then he had to take out all the tanks in front. But they were there until probably in the 70s. And this is a very clear, nice picture of the buildings. And now that we are calling it the Ben Thomas Building. And it's isn't painted quite like it was in those days. It's all brick. And now we'll take a little step inside the Thomas building, and there we'll see, and you men will really recognize this, all of them, and men seem to. They have a stack of tires for the automobiles, and those tires are very, very small compared to what they have nowadays. And that was one of the first things that Rob Fry noticed, was he brought everybody over to see these tires. And then behind the counter, and this is the old fashioned counters that had the sliding glass doors, and you will see that same counter out at the Payette County Fairgrounds where they show and keep things in it. We donated that. And then even the typewriter that's in the back, my son has it, and it's back in Washington, D.C. right now. And the couple fellas that are in it are Jim McClure and my dad, Ben Thomas, and Frank Toady. I couldn't think of his name. I don't know whether his name will be familiar to many of you, but I just looked over at my photographer here, and he said, yeah, he knew him. So he was a real nice person. And again, they were showing many pictures of Russell Hooker because I don't think Russell ever married. I don't remember that he did. But he was always helping the carnifexes out, doing things and like I say, graveling the roads and trying to keep everything up nice and neat. And Russell was a good man to have around. All right, now we will go to, let's see, it would be where the apple bin is. And you turn like towards the school before you get to the apple bin. And you know, I should have gone down and looked at the name of those streets, but I don't remember. Iowa, is that one? But there was the First Baptist Church, and it was standing quite a while after we moved to Fruitland. And it was a beautiful church. And it's just a shame it was taken down because I think today would even be in good condition. But they had all the weddings and all the school graduations there at the time. And I can even remember that it was slanted from the back down to the pulpit, and then the pulpit was raised, and it would have plays there, and everything was really just lovely. I know nothing of how it was built or when it was built, but it certainly was a beautiful Baptist church, or any church that one would be really proud of. As I go over here, this is the third bridge that I have witnessed across the Snake River from Oregon into Idaho. I have a picture of it, 1923, the first bridge across the Snake River from Oregon to Idaho, and Ontario was in the background. And at that time, I was living in Ontario as a babe, but I do remember driving over later in my life during the snow and the winter, because the bridge was right down next to the water. It'd be even with the Oregon side, and then as it went over across to the Idaho side, it would raise rapidly. And during the winter, it was really scary in those old Model A's and Model T's and the cars that you would see. And since I wasn't too brave in the automobiles then, I was one of the very ones. And although my dad knew automobiles front and backwards, and I still couldn't trust him because I just didn't like it.
Do you have a picture of it there?
Yes, I have a picture of it here, so we will show that. And then also, we would in the wintertime have a lot of ice jams on the Snake River. And it would back it up till the water would be on the Oregon side where the bridge is. And it was a little bit difficult. Here is another picture of our depot, the one that burned, and it's from different sides. And like I say, the present, not the present depot, but the last depot that was built, and upstairs it had an apartment, and that's where George Davis and his family lived. and he was the depot agent. And I just fell in love with the apartment because it was really fixed up quite fancy. And her last name, maiden name, was Mitchell, I think. No, it wasn't. But her sister's name was Ralph Mitchell's wife. I can't think of what their name was.
Della Mitchell was Ralph's.
But it would be Della's sister. But I don't remember their maiden name at all. And then another picture that I really prize here. We had a first grade teacher that was Miss Jinx. Until later years, it was Mrs. Downing. And I believe she taught everybody, but I have a lovely picture of her. And I can even see her because she always wore her hair the same way with a little bun back here and a coat that had a little fur collar. And I think we all remember all of that about her.
German.
Pardon?
German. She was
she a Sherman?
She was German, I think.
There. And then right above her in a picture, as you will all like to see, is Fruitland High School baseball team. And I do want to read the names because some of you will recall who was in that team, and it was many years ago, although I do remember most of them. We have a picture, and it starts in, like I say, it tells you where they are, the front from the back, not just haphazardly. But Belaith Royston, Herb Coleman, Grant Gardner, Ben Harris, Lou Ramey, Robert Harris, and then there's a front row, Lyle Brown, Carl Scritchfield, Wendell Brown, and Harold Perry. And I think you will recognize most of them. And most of them, and this was back in their high school days with FHS on the front. So that one, and they were the old standbys of Fruitland. If anything needed to be done in later years, Lyle Brown, or any of them, they would be asked to do things. And now the old Sergeant House, and it was a real fancy one, and it had, I think, 10 acres around it. But anyway, they delivered milk, and it's located now, the day people that have the garage down here across from the, can't even think of their name, but
Side Day.
yeah, that's it. And they live in it now. And here is a picture of a 4-H picnic that we had many, many years ago in front of the old C.H. Sargent House. And they are, some of them still living too, I understand. And I'm taking you all over Fruitland and back and forth. And there was a family that was, we all loved, and it was the Beeler family. And they were real active in the Brethren Church. And a brother and sister that I was very fortunate to have known. And they were probably 6 or 7 years older than I. But they did a great deal of things for Fruitland. Across from the Brethren Parsonage, which is the Brethren Garage, I do believe, is a picture of the parsonage, and we lived right across from there, so you know which church that I was raised in here in Fruitland. It was the easiest get to, and it seemed like it was the most popular with all the FH students. And so we had a favorite car, my brother and mine, because I had to learn to drive quite young, and I was driving around even Ontario by 11 because my mother didn't drive, and Dad didn't have time to take her back and forth and over to Ontario to visit her family, so I learned to drive. And my brother was a couple of years older than I, so if I wasn't available, he would be, except that he was old enough that he could be working. And the old Model A, and I was always real proud of that Model A. I would love to have it today, but it burned. Then we are now working, and I will not say working, but we are now having the pictures here at the old Fruitland High School. And we're in the principal's area of the office. So in 1940, our office secretary had graduated a couple years before that, and her name was Lois Lynn, and she was a 1938 graduate All right, now we're going down Main Street again. I said we're going to jump around. That's about the way I can handle it, I guess. But you know where the Brunswick's Club is now? Well, it was a soft drink place at one time. It was called a Pastime. And is now the new Brunswick. And it was operated then by a family called Hon, Dick Richardson, and Babe Richardson. And I have a picture of the inside of it. And sitting at the bar stools, and which they aren't bar stools then, they weren't bar stools then, but they are now. And we used to go in and get our ice cream cones and all our root beer floats and things, but they happened to snap a picture of my brother Leland and myself and had us turn around. And I remember having the picture taken. The Chamber of Commerce also have that picture. Then as we all go through town, then of course there was the first post office that I remember is down where Club 7 is. And it was there for many, many years. And then next to it was the Swartwood Meat Market. And they also had, like candy bars and stuff like that, because I remember when I'd be sent over to get certain things, I'd make sure that Dad gave me an extra nickel so I could have one of the candy bars, because that was a real treat in those days to be able to get a candy bar, and especially for 5 cents. And then next to that was the barber shop, which is the barber shop now. And Sim Watkins, excuse me, Sim didn't have that one. It was, well, I'll go on from there. But in my home now, I have his towel box, or would be towel chest. That, you pull them out and you throw them in the dirty towels, and the thing snaps back. And it says when they were built and where they were built, and all the labels are still on it, and they are oak. And the reason I have it is my dad bought all the buildings, so therefore we have all the furniture that was in it, and it was some nice ones too. Now, and then next to that would be where there was an open door, garage door, and you had to open that by hand. And you go on the inside and undo these little slide things and then pull it back. And to this day, I have dreamt about going in there and getting a car out, because that was where Dad's cars were, and that was the car that I drove. So therefore, I'd be going in there getting the car. But as you see the picture, you will see all of that, and you will see the men out there standing by the pumps. And when I was in high school, I'd dash home and eat food and dash over and take care of the pumps while my dad would go home and eat. And then I would have time with my nickel to run by Swartwoods and get a candy bar to go back to school. So, and then next to that would be the drugstore, which shows. And Mr. Gardner, and it's the senior Mr. Gardner, and I just cannot think of his name. The next one was Grant. But anyway, we always called him Mr. Gardner, because you did in those days. And we all had a little bit of fear of him, because he watched us pretty close when we would be inside there. And it would be our soda fountain. And they made the best root beer floats. And there was a cherry Coke. And so the cherry Cokes don't have it nowadays all over our place here at Fruitland. And then they were milkshakes. And then in the different parts of the counters, there'd be these little vials of perfume, and there'd be all sorts of magazines. And then there would be like the counters with the glass in front that would have all kinds of candies in it. And then it would go on back and be closed off. And that is where the, it looks like there's a storage area back in there, but it's there where the tattoo shop is now. And I think they are putting something else in the back that'll be right next to the Brethren Church then. And then, of course, if you go on down that street, again, I don't know the name of the street, I just go, and the Brethren Church is on that corner.
Minnesota.
Okay, Minnesota. But then across from the old drugstore was Boise Pad Lumber Company. And then at different times, it went into a grocery store, and now it is the mortuary. And that takes you from the west to the east on the right-hand side of the street. Now we're going to cross the street, and there on the corner, which has burned, was called the Fruitland Association. And Harry P. Lewis, I think was the name of it. But anyway, that's where everybody, all the orchards, the apples were taken care of there. And I'm not sure of the year it would burn, but I do recall that we all dashed over there at night, and I lived not too far from the Brethren Church. And in the back of my dad's buildings, there was our fire truck. And our fire truck was 2 big barrels filled with the whatever you use to put the fire out. And then it had a little push bar in the back of it. And you push this over to the fire. And that's what they used. So naturally, the fire burned to the ground. And let's see, next to it, going from east to west, was another service station. And Mr. Manser, that had the Manser motor in Payette, had that service station at the time. And there was a little house behind it that his family lived in. And from there, there was a boarding house, and they cooked the best chicken. We didn't go out too much, but she did cook real good chicken. I don't recall the boy's name, but he was in the class, graduated in the class of 41, with Richard Gardner. Their last name was Jones. And then we started into the Watkins place. And there was another barbershop, and Sim Watkins had that to begin with. And then we go next to, of course, they had their house behind it too, and that's where Fanny and Sim Watkins, and Fanny was the 8th grade junior high teacher, and I don't know later whether she taught in high school or not, did she? She stayed
Principal.
junior high then. I had her as a high school teacher, and of course the Watkins name is familiar to most of you, not mainly because of her, unless you're an old timer, but they are still here. Rick is a clerk for the city and is down at City Hall. Then the dry goods store, and that was Violets were there. And then next to, and behind in Violets, they had a beauty shop. And then next to that was the Moeller Mercantile. And it had both dry goods and groceries and anything you want, the meat market. And that takes you to the end of that street and across, which is the school administration offices, and it was a post office. And then on down the street, is the steakhouse. And at the time I was a little girl, it was I think you folks
Feed store.
it was a feed store. And it still gives you the feeling.
Dean Ellis owned it the last
Yeah.
first I knew.
Alice did, and they, oh dear, I had it in my mind, and I should have written it down when I had it in my mind, because it can slip. He was there, well, anyway.
It burned.
Pardon?
The original feed store burned.
Yeah, but the people that had it right there, and I would recall it, but he had 2 sons, and they're living in Payette, but I just can't recall the names. And, let's see, we were at the feed store, and now we go into the different houses along the way. And next to that would have been the cold storage building, is when I remember. Now, I don't know whether it was something else before that. And it was, he just recently passed away. George, yeah. And it was their place. And then, of course, next to that was the Fruitland Old Grade School. And that's where a lot of us attended grade school and junior high. until the school was built over here. And I don't remember the year that the old grade school was taken down and it was a park. But, and then of
We
course,
have that somewhere.
I think that it is available for you. And then I have a few snaps of just different ones of different levels of school here. Like the Pete Johnson building, there's a picture of his daughter that went to school part-time here. And different names that probably would be familiar to a lot of you. But quite a few of them are deceased. I think I look back and I think I'm about the only living one in through there. Although we will have Opal Eldridge will be here to be with us. Or Opal Dixon, excuse me, I'm going back a long way. And I did want to have it seen, let's see, and it was after or before Jay Stoner took over our music department. And his picture is in here, but I don't know, I don't recall who he is. But there'll be many students in this picture that a lot of you will recognize and know.
Were you in the band?
No, I wasn't in the band. My brother was in the band. And, a lot of the Andersons and the Tussings and the Williams and, just down.
When did it start?
Let's see, Leland was in the 6th grade, I think, in this picture, because it wasn't all just the high school band. And I think he was the youngest one. And then Jay Stoner took him to different contests in Seattle that he brought home the bacon for us. And then out in front of the high school, we always tried to have a lot of our pictures out in front of our high school because we were and still are very, very proud of our old high school. There's many, many memories and it's just a lovely place. But here was we started the Fruitland High School Alumni Association. And so here it says that we're going to have it on June the 25th and 26th, and it named the officers. Anyone who had attended school there in the 50-year class of 1916, 1914, 1915 will be honored. And there's a picture here of Mrs. Clarence. The reservations can be made through Mrs. Clarence Ficken and Mrs. Jim Whitmore. And then there are pictures of Mrs. Jim Whitmore, Mrs. Denny Dyer, and Mrs. Jerry Melcher, and T.R. Hingler, and then our chairman, Joe Church.
And that started in 1961.
Yeah, that was our first one, 1961. Okay, and I guess, Howard Judy was sitting here in one of our pictures too, and he's one of our graduates that have gone.
Were you the student body president when you were a senior?
Yes. Oh, I'm very proud of that. I'm glad she mentioned it because Fruitland High School was just tops. And my brother was student body president the year he graduated, 2 years ahead of me. And I just never felt that I wanted him to get ahead of me. When he would play music, then I was taking dancing. And so therefore I would be dancing and he'd be playing the saxophone. So when I got 1938, I wanted to be president so bad. And Larry Burton, our coach, knew this, and he just went out and he campaigned for me. And that was the reason I'm sure that I was student body president, was because of our coach, Larry Burton.
You were the first female?
Second female, yeah. Swarwood. Swarwood was our first one. I was the second one. And Lisa Grant was the third. And just recently, what is Limbaugh's daughter?
Anne Marie.
Anne Marie told me that she was going to be the fourth.
So, do you remember when it was named Fruitland Grizzlies?
No, it was Fruitland Grizzlies as long as I remember. Maybe there was another name, was there? I don't remember it ever being another name. No. So, and Fruitland Main Street is one big picture here. And we're proud of the whole town, and we're especially proud of our schools, right from the very beginning. We're going to go to Val's Floral Shop and think of what has been in there many, many times.
Look on the other side.
Val's Floral, Pete Johnson had, wasn't a soda fountain, it was a bar. And then it had gone into Rankin's dry goods store, that one, and the store next to it that sells the uniforms. And from there, we went into Bud Moss Rip, had a drugstore there, and that was in about 1952. But further back now, the place that's the uniform shop was the hangout for everybody. And I was in nurse's training then, so it was about 1939 and 40. And when I get to come home, very rarely, then this one time my brother Leland took me over there so I could see everybody. And it was the nicest hangout place that I'd ever seen for Fruitland. And it took in all the area, and then it seemed like a lot. That's where the uniform shop is. And they had what they called the music box, and I just, for the life of me, I cannot remember what the music box looks like, whether it was an old Nickelodeon or just what, but that would be in 40 and 41. I don't know whether we had them back then, but I think so. And then we'll go on across the street from Val's, and right straight across from Val's store was the old bank, and it was the old Fruitland Bank, and south of it was a little theater, just a little makeshift room, and not anything very fancy, but there was a theater, and in summertime we did sit outside too, so I remember that, so maybe it only ran in the summertime. And then next to that was what we called the Fruitland Banner, and it was really quite a little newspaper that we had. I have some samples here. And then it went over and settled in New Plymouth and became the Head Valley Sentinel. Now that we've covered that block, and now we'll head out from the Apple Bin toward the school. And right there on that corner was an old garage, and then it was a pretty good sized garage, and it was made of the white brick again. And Glenn Lochner and Bill Engelhorn, that had been trained by my dad down at the Universal Motor Company, the other end of town, and Dad thought that they were ready to go out on their own, and they set up shop there, and they were there for a number of years. I don't know where the sign Universal Motor Company has ended up. I'd like to find it, but I have no idea where it is. And then across where the Day secondhand car business place is, let's see, that was, what was it?
Hitchcock gas station.
Oh yeah, it was a Hitchcock gas station that was in through there. And we head on down the street, and there were some little homes, and there was a George Davis that was in that little house next to the garage, and next to that, I think, is where the Laverne White's parents lived. And then we came on down to the corner, and the people that ran it, the first ones that I remember, and that was back in the 30s, was the Glaze family, and it was a service station and little cabins around it for the people that came to work in the fall. And then from there, another family took it, and I cannot recall their name, I can still see them. They had two lovely girls. If they'd been boys, I'd probably remember. But anyway, they started it was the first fish hamburger, or the first fish burger that I had ever seen. And boy, was it good. We just all liked to go down and have fish burgers, and they had really good hamburgers. And our students worked there. My daughter-in-law that lives in Alaska, Debbie, worked there her senior year. And I might have thought to call her, she could have given us the name. And then from on over there, we're headed right straight across to our high school. And it's just like the song says, we are proud of our dear old high school, with our banner, something I used to recall all the way through. But anyway, you probably know it and could sing it, and we'll have it during some of our meetings at times. And with being so proud of this school,
We should always remember that, and sometimes it takes more work.
it wouldn't hurt of our graduates to go ahead and help support the building. Free to do so, I'll tell you. We'll go across the street, and which is George Anderson's. Well, I guess we went into that, didn't we? That was the time that before. George, our parents would go out and kill their deer or their cow. If we didn't have any place at home, which you didn't then they would, like a big freezer we'd walk into, and we'd store them there. And the street, which is now the post office, was the old elementary school. We were always proud of that. There in the back part, which is the park now, was, as always, Fruitland never had enough room. I think there were 3 small buildings put in back there, and they used them for the junior high. And after the high school was finished, then different families bought the buildings and homes out of them. And one of them was right across from where the bear is, and that was one of the school buildings that they had for the Fruitland students. And then on that side of the street, and we still have our big school building on the south side. Kids moved into town, and all of that was in. They built a nice home. And next to that, there was a shop built, and it was for their daughter. And Jack Grimm also trained there, and their daughter was Louise Fickendule, and Louise went to school at Fruitland and graduated the same year from Fruitland High School. And I think that was 38. And Ron and Louise decided to go back, yes, because he, oh dear, I think it was in 44 that he was in D-Day, but I think it was D6. Then we go on around the corner, and there's another Johnson that lived, and that house is still there, and it's right next to City Hall. Then our business areas all stopped. Homes were on that side. But then I wanted to kind of take in on the west side of 95. And Mr. Duell came out from the east with his homesteaded 80 acres there, and that's now the Duell Edition. And also the business of the new vet that we have out there, the Dr. Ashton, was also sold to Spain House, and that was the old Limbaugh house, and included part of the 80 acres that was homesteaded there by the Duell family. And the wood and everything for the houses and the plans was ordered from Sears Roebuck. And there were 2 big houses out there, and the one is still standing. The gateway was and of course this was probably in the early 40s. Yeah, it was in the early 40s. It was before 41, I know that, before Pearl Harbor. There was a dance hall there. And although I was in Boise in nurses training, and in those days I just as well have been in Portland because I never got home. And it was where a lot of the ones that used to dance down at the old Fruitland dance hall would be out there, as well as the young married couples would be dancing out there. And then it went into a bowling alley, I believe. And then, of course, from then on, it has developed into what it is now, which is a very nice area there. But when I was a little girl, across from the shopping area, which was the old dance hall, there was our swimming pool. And it was a neat one. And it was Wilcox Corner, it was called. And Mrs. Wilcox is probably one of our oldest living graduates, and she is not well enough to be here now, because I think she's 95 or 6 and just not doing too well. And they had the swimming pool and the park had beautiful trees, even to the point that my youngest son, who graduated in the 70s, remember that park. And of course the swimming pool, I think, was closed off much before then.
That park was called Gala Gardens.
Eden
Later.
Gardens, yeah, it was, that's right. But as we went, it was the old Wilcox Corner, so, and,
When they had the store there, it was Sweetwood.
oh,
Later.
yes, I'd forgotten that, there was a store Sweetwood, and then there was also service station, Sinclair was it? And that was Betty Lloyd Johnson's place, if I remember. And Betty in later years was, which all of you will remember her in our office here as the secretary. And I think that's about as far as we went then. And even down there now where they have the pets and sell, I don't think we had anything there the later years.
They had little cabins where
Yeah.
people could stay. And
Yeah, there were little cabins down in there.
And then they turned it into a trailer court.
Uh-huh. And then on down by the river, and that's in the Fruitland district, isn't it? That not Payette, that trailer court that was at Remington's, and it's still there. But it was at one time kind of a park that had like merry-go-rounds and Ferris wheels and things like that in it. And then it went on into a RV park. I believe that's all that I do recall. Did you think, have I missed anything I should bring out?
We didn't get the cannery.
Oh, yes, Fruitland had a cannery, and was that something to have, I'll tell you. There wasn't much for our young people to do in the summertime as far as make money. But as far as the total cannery itself, and who was the original builder of that? I don't remember, but anyway, it's the cannery and it was down here south of the high school, the old high school. And it's still there. I don't believe they're using it for anything special now. It went from canning corn to, even some of our teachers in the summertime worked there. And then from canning corn, it went to cider and was
Vinegar.
cider and cider vinegar, that's right. And what is his name? Kenny?
Fairchild, Roger Fairchild.
Yeah, Roger Fairchild. I ran into him recently at the post office, and he told me that on I-84, as you head toward Boise, just out probably a quarter of a mile, you'll see a bunch of tanks. And those tanks, and Roger lives up there, and what he is doing, he's distilling fresh apple cider vinegar, and it's being shipped all over the world. Forgot what it goes by now. Not Fruitland, but another name. But you're probably buying fresh apple cider vinegar from Fruitland. Is there anything else that's, I don't either, the Shell station, there wasn't anything there but a junction. The Shell went in. And now we have a new John Deere, Campbell's John Deere, right across from the Shell station now. So we are expanding. We already did toward Payette, and now we're toward New Plymouth. And that's it.
Daryl Ireland, Darlene's brother, before they moved to Moses Lake, we're over there quite a bit. Over there in Melcher? Yeah. Frances Melcher is Darlene's sister.
Not too right across the street from him.
And Melcher.
The next house up? Yeah.
No, straight across the street.
Yeah, okay. That's right, I remember that.
Yeah, Daryl and Darlene.
All I remember is that every once in a while Melcher would come play with us and he'd use those side braces as a body kick when you judge and try and guard it. I know that.
And I've often thought about that. How unhealthy was that for us reading all that dust and hate dust playing basketball?
You know, you're a pretty good sport.
Yeah, that dust be everywhere.
She's just saying it because it was true.
Yeah.
You want a handheld or you want a Hey, that's Oh,